All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're here at Fairview Cemetery here in Van Buren, Arkansas. This was the first cemetery ever established in Crawford County. The land was donated by Colonel John Drennan, who was one of the co-founders of Van Buren, and he donated this land to the city of Van Buren with the idea that there was a need for a public cemetery. So we're going to take a look at some of the things that are in this cemetery. I will tell you, after the Civil War started, that a section of the cemetery was donated by the city of Van Buren for the burial of many Confederate soldiers. And these markers that we're about to see here in a second, many of them will say unknown Confederate soldiers. So I just kind of wanted to give you that little bit of history there. There are some prominent citizens, politicians, physicians that we'll talk about here in a little bit that are buried here, including John Drennan himself. And let's go take a look at it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here is the Confederate section of the cemetery. Let's go look at this marker we've got right here. So this says, "The Battle of Prairie Grove was a grim moment for the Confederate Army. The conflict severed all chances for the South to use northwest Arkansas as a route to invade Missouri. This shattered and defeated soldiers retreated from Prairie Grove to Van Buren. Fairview Cemetery was a witness to wagons and ambulances making their way down the hill as the Confederate Army desperately ran from the Union soldiers. It was at this same site that cannons were lined up to shell the community of Van Buren. Over 400 unknown Confederate soldiers are buried here in Fairview Cemetery, including some who fought and died in this battle. A marble memorial to the brave soldiers who gave their lives in the war between the states is located in the northwest corner of the cemetery. The Civil War comes home." Now, one thing that I found interesting about this, and most of the information that I've given you thus far is not stuff that I'm pulling out of my rear. It's stuff that I didn't even look up on Wikipedia, because you can't trust Wikipedia. But it's stuff that I looked at from vanburencity.org, and the information, there was a PDF, and you can go look at it for yourself if you'll just Google Fairview Cemetery, Van Buren, Arkansas. And I think it's the second result, vanburencity.org, and it'll give you some of this information. But originally, there were 100 Confederate soldiers that were buried here, and later on, some other Confederate soldiers were reburied here. Maybe people that died in, like, over in Fort Smith or up at Prairie Grove, and I think the PDF said something, made mention of, you know, these Confederate soldiers were probably from Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi, places like that. So we're going to go and we're going to look at some of these markers. And as you see here over the landscape, we've got these white markers that I believe were put here in 1889 by the Daughters of the Confederacy. I don't know for sure about the Daughters of the Confederacy or that exact date, but I know later on these white markers were put here for these Confederate soldiers. Okay. We also have a flagpole there, and that flag, you can't really see it, but that is the official Confederate flag. So this is not the flag that most people are accustomed to seeing, or the flag that there were so many arguments about in 2015. This is the flag that looks probably more close to the Texas or the Puerto Rican flag, and it's got a circle, I think it's a circle of 9 stars, and it's got either 2 stripes or 3 stripes on it. And so those 9 stars, I think, all symbolize, there's a better shot of it right there, the states that were in the Confederacy. But the flag that we're used to seeing as the Confederate flag was actually a battle flag of a local state regiment, and I forget which state it was. But if you look closely here, we've got what looks like possibly some kind of cross. It kind of resembles a Celtic cross, but I don't know exactly what that symbol means. The wreaths are kind of covering up what's marked here, but this is very military. And you've got, you can see there, the unknown. And I think it's interesting that even though we live in a day and age where people want to dig up Confederate graves just because we want to cancel history, and I'm not advocating at all for slavery, I'm not advocating at all for racial injustice, and I would have to say that the main bout of fighting over slavery to keep it was not right. But at the end of the day, these people gave their lives for a cause they believe in, and I think their graves should be respected. You know, I'm not necessarily saying that we have to come out here and lay wreaths every year, but at the same time, I don't think they should be dug up and destroyed. Let the dead rest in peace. The Civil War was a hard time for our country. Whether you were on the side of the North or the side of the South, it was a nation divided. Father against son, son against father, brother against brother. It was a black eye in our history, but thank goodness that the Union was preserved. And so this northeast side of the cemetery, and possibly quite literally, we from what I've read, we may very well be standing in a part of where the battle took place. I'll make a separate video sometime in the future about the Battle of Van Buren. I want to stay true to Fairview Cemetery, but this is such a big part of Fairview Cemetery that I could not just ignore it. So now we're going to look at some different markers. We're going to talk about some of the different people that are buried here that were influential to Van Buren and just influential in general. So we're going to do that now. Now this is looking south in the cemetery. If you look west, that goes up that little ridge there. That's Fayetteville Road. And this cemetery is at the corner of what is called Poplar Street, which runs east to west, and Fayetteville Road, which is Arkansas State Highway 59, and that is the north-south corridor through Van Buren. The locals call this hill that you're coming down, this overlook, where you can, if you look southwest, you can see the Arkansas River, and you can see downtown Van Buren, and if you have a very close look, you can see parts of downtown Fort Smith. This hill, up on the top of it, is called Logtown Hill. There used to be a community up there called Logtown, and that was a different town. Possibly this might have been the site of what was Columbus, which was a site that was originally to be considered the site of Van Buren, but because of its elevation, it was considered by Drennan and his associate Thompson that the current location of downtown Van Buren was a better fit. So they bought the land from a gentleman named Phillips, who founded Phillips Landing, which is what Van Buren was known at the time. And I believe they bought it for a sum of $11,000. And they bought this land. And part of the purchase that Thompson and Drennan made, this land that we stand on now, Fairview Cemetery, was donated to the city of Van Buren for the purpose of having a public cemetery. And so that kind of gives you a little bit of the history of Van Buren. And some of the prominent people, I'm not going to try to go find their graves. I have more to do today than doing that. But some of the people that were prominent that are buried here is the guy we've been talking about who donated this land, Colonel John Drennan. He was the founder, one of the co-founders of VB. He bought this land, and he bought all the land that was Van Buren at the time from Phillips. We talked about that. And what's really neat is John Drennan was a clerk for the U.S. Court in Western Arkansas, and he went to Little Rock to the state constitutional convention in 1836 when Arkansas became a state. Another prominent figure that's buried here is Judge Jesse Turner. Judge Jesse Turner. He was the Arkansas state representative for Crawford County and Franklin County. He was involved in the railroad, and there is a housing area in the southern part of Van Buren behind the old hospital that's named after Judge Jesse Turner, and it's called Judge Jesse Turner's Court. I made a mistake when I said that John Drennan was a clerk for the U.S. Court. I actually meant another guy that I want to point out that's buried here, and that is Alexander McLean. He was a clerk for the U.S. Court for the Western Arkansas District, and he was also the first mayor of Van Buren. There are many former mayors and postmasters buried here. I'm going to try to put a list in the video. It was just too much information to write down, and again, this information is not stuff I'm pulling out of my tail. This is stuff from this PDF that I found on VanBurenCity.org. But I will tell you, there was a gentleman who was a prominent businessman. His name is James A. Scott, and he was married to Mr. Thompson's daughter. So Thompson being the co-founder of Van Buren with Mr. Drennan. And he established a very successful business in Van Buren. It didn't give the information as to what that business was. But a question I have for people that know the history of Van Buren better than I do, and that is, this James Scott, was he the namesake for the Drennan Scott house? That's my hypothesis, but I don't know that for sure, so I'm not going to make that claim if I don't know. But that's a question that I want to raise to those that were, their families are from Van Buren. They have roots in Van Buren for over 75 years, something like that. I'm from Van Buren. I was born here, but my parents are from Central and South Arkansas, so I'm kind of a transplant here in a way, and I live in that area now, in Central Arkansas, but I was born and raised here, so I'm the Van Buren sheep of the family, if you want to say it that way. But we're going to take a look around Fairview, kind of walk around a little bit, and I want to show you some of the different designs of the graves, such as the Masonic design. There was one that I saw where it was basically the idea that you're connected to the Word of God and to the Bible. And then over off in the distance, you can see that tall pillar grave that looks white. And they say that is a connection to light or to sunlight. Kind of like the Egyptian pyramid type look. Kind of resembles the Washington Monument, if you look at it close enough. There it is. So we're going to take a look at some of those and just take a nice stroll through Fairview Cemetery. I want to tell you what, guys, it's pretty in the fall when these leaves start changing. We got some dead leaves on that tree up there. You got some things that are gated within. There's another gate over there on the other side of my truck, right before the Confederacy stuff. There's a gate right there in the distance. I hope this information has been helpful to you in understanding Fairview Cemetery, and if there's anything I got wrong, feel free to correct me on it. I tried my best to be accurate, but I'm not a perfect person, so if there's something I got wrong, there's something I got wrong, you know. This has got some type of design on it. With this, looks like it might be a log on top of it. I may not walk around and get all these different types of designs, but I will take pictures of them, or some of them at least, and I'll put those in the video. But this is looking northwest up Logtown Hill. I would love to walk all over the cemetery, but guys, I'm out of shape and I'm hungry. And then this is looking southwest. Off in the distance, you might not be able to see it in the video, but you can see the Midland Bridge. You can see the Arkansas River, and of course you can see Highway 59 as well. This is looking directly south, and that's looking southeast. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, I guess you can get a hold of me somehow, either on YouTube or whatever, and if you have any corrections, just let me know. This is Fairview Cemetery, guys.